A silent film with sound, or a sound film that goes silence. Blackmail, 1929. Synopsis. Groce's daughter, Alice White, kills a man in self-defense when he tries to sexually assault her. Her policeman boyfriend covers up for her, but she has been spotted leaving the scene by a petty criminal who tries to blackmail her. Alfred Hitchcock's Shot with Blackmail, 1929, is his last silent film and his first sound film at the same time. The silent film version was the most popular in the cinema in those days. The sound film version is it today. The following lecture aims to show the differences but also commonalities between the two versions. The focus is not on a break, but rather on the flowing transitions between them. Hitchcock's suspense schemes had to be modified only slightly, but then decidedly for the sound film version. He has built up central scenes of his films on a silent film aesthetics right up to his late works, and was therefore able to show entire scenes from the silent film version in almost the same form as the sound film version of Blackmail. The film historian Charles Baar found that Hitchcock was forced to work less cinematically by positioning the microphone in the sound film version. While in the silent film version he tried to avoid a theatrical setting in which the camera occupies the position of fourth wall, he was unable to do that in the sound film version. Also, the English voice of the Czech silent movies actress Anny Ondra was spoken synchronously live during the filming by the actress Joan Barry from the off-camera. Hitchcock later explained to Truffaut in this book. This is a German version of this famous book. I hope you have read it. It's very important. Hitchcock's later explained to Truffaut that he had already created the silent film version as a sound film. So it was not difficult for him to rebuild or upgrade to a sound film. At the time, however, only a few cinemas were able to play sound films, so that at the time, in contrast to today, a silent film version was shown, as most times. Hitchcock wrote the screenplay himself, which was based on a play. The opening scene of Blackmail shows the arrest of a shifty crim holed up in a bed in a tenement flat. This prehistory, which deals with the arrest, conviction and imprisonment, is exactly the same in both versions. It serves to introduce the male protagonist Frank Webber, played by John Longden, and his work as a Scotland Yard detective. There are no dialogues to be heard here either in the audio film version. Afterwards, the sound film version essentially shows extended dialogues, which instead allow a game for social spaces. The silent film version often seems more eerie and oppressive due to a distance from the viewer, while the sound creates closeness and more emotionality. With sound, the figures appeared more human, less abstract. The dialogues allow more negotiations between them. The structure of the negotiations is largely the same. It's about the pretty but also self-referential blonde Alice White, a young woman played by Anny Ondra, who wants to be worshipped and courted by men. Alice's dichotomy is her impatience with lack of attention that she does not get from her friend the Scotland Yard detective Frank, and her natural tendencies to seek adventures with other men. Natural only this. Her impatience with Frank seems on the one hand to be the normal don't leave me waiting attitude. She's an attraction and she knows it. That's why one lover isn't enough. She's got two. In the previous silent film, The Manxman, 1929, the same year, there was the same structure. The figure played by Anny Ondra stood between two men. This is a typical triangle. A female trophy and two male hunters, an object of desire and two subjects who wanted it. Male rivalry and female narcissism are classic distributions of roles. Very clear optical differences are then revealed in the MeToo sequence, where the painter Mr. Crew, played by Cyril Richards, tries to rape Alice and she kills him with a bread knife. The sadistic cat and woman game between them has been treated very differently in the two versions. The most important difference is a typical Hitchcock tracking shot, which is only available in the silent film version. It shows how a person gets closer and we see it from their perspective through a tracking shot. It takes place immediately before the painter tries to overwhelm his victim. I want to show you this short scene. Going on. The suite emanating from the painter is visualized as a spatial impression and leaves strong impression. One could describe the significance of this tracking shot with an extremely short story by Franz Kafka I read. A little fable. Alice, said the mouse, the world is growing smaller every day. At the beginning it was so big that I was afraid. I kept running and running, and I was glad when I saw walls far away. To the right and the left. But these long walls have narrowed so quickly that I am in the last chamber already, and there's in the corner stands the trap I must run into. You only need to change your direction, said the cat and ate it up. The sadism of Kafka, which is often associated with the silent film, because he saw many silent films, only needs to be thought of in a gender-specific way, and we have the scene that is undoubtedly one of the highlights of Blackmail. I also like to show you the last part of the sequence in the audio version.
got it?
Please give it to me.
All right, come around. Come on, get it.
Please, please.
Come on, Alice. There it is. Don't be silly, Alice. Don't be silly.
Don't! Let me go! Let me go! Let me go! Oh, 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 let me go! Let me go! Oh, 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 no! No! Oh, oh. Let me go! Oh.
The garnish in the sound film version is spicier. Hitchcock uses the dialogues and also a piano here to keep the female victim in the trap for longer. The approaches are longer and there's a longer view on Alice changing her clothes. She attempts rap itself take place in both versions exactly the same and in a very Victorian behind the curtain. The mouse defends itself by killing the cat. Alice kills Crew with a bread knife. Typical of Hitchcock, an innocent is being hunted. And Alice is guilty although she is actually innocent because it was self-defense. From now on, everything revolves mainly around the murder and almost not longer around the attempt of rape. This could be an upside-down slasher movie, better than every slasher movie, better than Psycho, 1960. Who was the first real slasher movie. But it has not become that because it does not represent a female position, but remains entirely in a male perspective. The woman is sin, is the fall, is Eve. She seduced the man, irritated him, it's her fault. And so the sound helps the director to describe the guilt of the female victim even more forcefully. This is because the conscience first and foremost listens to the call, to the appeal that the superego is a kind of command, rather a language than a picture. In both versions we have the traumatic return of the knife with Alice. She has not some problem. She has no trauma because Crew tried to rape her, but she has a trauma because she stabbed him. Hitchcock stages of crime and punishment without a real crime. In both versions we have the image of the neon sign that becomes a knife. But only in the sound film version do we have this conversation from which the word knife, knife, knife always flashes out.
Breakfast? I couldn't look back in the face after what happened last night. And under our very noses. Mind you, I don't think myself it's altogether the police's fault. What I mean is they have to wink at some things. I mean, it's one thing to buy chocolates out of ours, but it's quite another to stick a knife into a gentleman. I must say I feel the same way about that, too. A good, clean, honest whack over the head with a brick is one thing. There's something British about that. But knives... No, knives is not right. I must say that's what I think and that's what I feel. Whatever the provocation, I could never use a knife. Now, mind you, a knife is a difficult thing to handle. I mean, any knife. I mean, if you use a knife, or a pocket knife, they wouldn't belong in them. A butcher's knife.
Alice, cut us a bit of bread, will you?
Knife. What's that other knife? An exact knife. A knife is a dangerous thing. Be careful of a knife. You come up against a knife. Oh, no. I mean, in Chelsea, you mustn't use a knife.
Yeah, you ought to have been more careful. Might have cut somebody with that.
In this famous sequence, Hitchcock fully explodes the new possibilities of sound film as a surreal art medium within a subjective perspective. Alice suffers from both acoustic and optical hallucinations. Her immense guilt distorts reality. It's basically a psychotic effect. Reality changes when displacement is no longer enough. Alice is experiencing a mixed reality. Parts of her guilty inscribe themselves into reality as reality. But this effect is only sporadic and cancels itself out and out again. Hitchcock's strongest interest in psychoanalysis is already evident here. But it is rather his Catholicism from which the spiritual life is interesting for him. Forbidden desire, isn't it about the same for Catholics and Lacanian psychoanalysis? That is the reason for Slavoj Žižek's interest in Hitchcock and Lacan. Hitchcock basically wants to show the sick natures of Catholic soul life. In doing so, he achieves much greater precision precisions if he can also take the sound into the production for his own purposes. Unlike Chaplin, Hitchcock was obsessed with playing with sound and still making very optical films. Blackmail was the first English sound film. Unlike Chaplin, his films do not focus on effective images, but mainly on film montage, which is why Godard's like him so much. Jean-Luc Godard is a great fan of Hitchcock, was a great fan of Hitchcock. For the film montage, however, clay is just another interesting area of work. Here, two new combinations can finally be tested. And Hitchcock always have done this. Goodbye.